Ahmed Quraishi, Senior Research Fellow at an independent Pakistani think tank, Project for Pakistan in 21st Century. Mr. Quraishi, how do you assess Mr. Zardari's visit to the NATO summit?
Well, the opinion was divided in Pakistan with regards to whether it would be useful for Pakistan to attend the summit. And I think the predominant view was that we really don't have much to say or do by attending the summit. And I think this viewpoint, and of course there was the other viewpoint, that it would be nice for for our president to be there to communicate with the NATO member countries and with the U.S., of course, the host country. But I think eventually after the summit, it is clear that the viewpoint that said that we should not have gone there, the president should not have gone there, has prevailed and has been proven right. Overall, it was quite obvious that, I wouldn't say the NATO countries, but the United States, the host country, tried to use a few small steps to sort of humiliate Pakistan and express its displeasure, which was strange because as we speak, and even while the summit was taking place in Chicago, there was a very high-level team of American diplomats and members of the American military who were in Islamabad, the Pakistani capital, quietly negotiating with the Pakistani side the details of the new arrangement for the NATO supply line and other cooperation in Afghanistan. So while those negotiations were going on, it was really strange to see the United States going overboard in expressing its urgency for the restoration of the NATO supply line, knowing that the negotiations on the technical level are going on, and knowing also that the Pakistani president per se would not interfere and has no direct role in the technical level talks for the restoration of the NATO supply line. So for the U.S. president to go overboard in trying to sort of ignore or send indirect messages to the Pakistani delegation by ignoring Pakistan's role in whatever has been happening in Afghanistan over the past decade was a little inappropriate. So overall, I think the assessment is that the summit itself really was useless from the Pakistani perspective. There was nothing gained, or even for that matter lost, really, by our participation. The only thing that could have happened in Chicago was for the Pakistani side and the Pakistani president to announce a deal has been made and the NATO supply line has been opened if and when the technical level negotiators of both countries in Islamabad would have reached a conclusion. But that did not happen, so the Pakistani president, unfortunately, did not have anything in his hand to announce there. But again, his participation there was not on the basis of that he would announce anything there. It was on the basis of the fact that Pakistan, a week before the summit, openly announced that it has no problem with reopening the NATO supply line if and when a full agreement is made on the technical details on the restoration of the NATO supply line. The American position was very arrogant, yes. It was very obvious for us that NATO member countries were not using the same diplomatic approach that the U.S. government was using with Pakistan. The American side was, which is very strange, as I said, when your own technical negotiators from the U.S. State Department, from the Pentagon, are there in Islamabad and are meeting every day with Pakistani negotiators, again on a technical level, from the Pakistani Foreign Ministry, from the Pakistani Armed Forces, and from other departments of the Pakistani government. When these talks are going on, and both governments, the government of the United States and the government of Pakistan, realize that this is not for politicians to resolve. This is for technical level people from the military, people from related to transportation, business, people related to customs, who are dealing with the issue of containers and how they will be transported from Pakistan to Afghanistan. When these people are negotiating and they're supposed to reach a deal about prices per container and so forth, then it is not up to the Pakistani president or to the U.S. president, really, to take a political decision. If the technical level experts reach a conclusion, that's when the Pakistani president would be in a position to announce the reopening. But in principle, Pakistan has agreed to reopen the NATO supply line and the measures it took 6 months ago. So that was the basis for inviting Pakistan to the NATO summit in Chicago. So when all of this is the background, it is strange for the Americans to adopt such an arrogant line and expect the Pakistani president to announce, for example, the immediate reopening when the technical level talks are yet to be concluded.
Now we have Shakil Afridi sentenced.
That is a very overdue step, but since it has finally happened, that's a good move. I think this would send a very clear message to some of our friends, unfortunately, in Washington, D.C., who have maintained and executed a very flawed relationship with Pakistan over the past decade, a relationship based on covert operations without the knowledge of the host country, Pakistan, a relationship where our citizens were being recruited. For example, this doctor who was working for a vaccination program, of all things, was recruited, and of course, as a result, the vaccination program itself that this Dr. Shakil Afridi was part of has been damaged, or its credibility has been damaged in the eyes of many of my countrymen. These things, I think, were really flawed, sign of a flawed relationship that some people, some quarters in Washington, D.C., not all parts of the U.S. government, but some parts of the U.S. government were pursuing in Pakistan. So this verdict really sends a message that these kind of activities are not good for a healthy relationship. If the United States wants to have a good relationship, a working relationship with Pakistan, they need to respect this country's red lines. And one of these red lines is you cannot just simply, behind our backs, go and recruit our citizens and then use them for covert actions and so on our soil. If we are partners, we should know about what the U.S. is planning or is wanting to do and what the CIA wants to do here, and we should know that in advance. And this is a clear message, obviously, and I think this is a remarkable verdict also because this sort of ends whatever arrangements that Pakistan had with the United States immediately after 9/11 when, yes, then government of President Pervez Musharraf did allow covert action by CIA inside Pakistan, and often without the knowledge of his own government. He did permit that, but it's quite clear now that 10 years on, those arrangements are completely off the table now.
Mr. Quraishi, thank you so much. And just a reminder, our guest speaker was Ahmed Quraishi, Senior Research Fellow at an independent Pakistani think tank, Project for Pakistan in 21st Century.